Okay, so this is our second half of our class, which deals with the media and how they portray black hair, also in politics, like the workplace, and stigmas on hair texture. Very interesting topic. All right, so first thing that we're going to talk about is the natural hair scale. And as you know, black hair is very, very diverse. We have the most diverse hair texture, the most unique hair texture on the planet. And so our hair comes in many different beautiful textures. So they have created a scale that shows you the different hair textures that black women often possess. And they start with one, and then they have two, a category of two. And then within the category, there's subcategories to A, to B, to C. And then they go into threes, four, and fours. So you might want to, as you look at this scale, if you don't know what hair texture you are, this will definitely help you kind of give a little bit of clue on the category of hair that you are. Now, for me, I'm in the fours, so I'm between 4B and 4C. It just depends on how moisturized my hair is. Sometimes I could be a 4A, but it just depends on the product. But naturally, without any product or anything, I'm definitely between a 4B and a 4C. So my hair is very tightly coiled, and often the fours are very tightly coiled, but they are the most delicate type of hair, um, um, based upon all the rest of the type of hair on the natural hair scale. But in the fours, it's the most fragile type of hair, especially when it is wet. Okay, so and again, you might look and see which hair texture you are. And this scale is often used for a lot of hairdressers, also for just individuals so they know how to maintain the different type of hair textures. Some hair textures closer to one, two, and three can handle moisture, um, better than those who are in the in the fours. So I know my hair can get very dry. Those who are in the threes and twos and ones, they have natural oils in their hair and it keeps it very moisturized. Okay. That is a video, so I will place the link also in the email if you can't hear it. Okay. All right. So straight hair. So the first thing that we're going to talk about, of course, is straight hair. And straight hair is something that black women have assimilated to in order um, to to correlate with the European standards of beauty in this country. Naturally, a lot of black women do not naturally have straight hair. Some do, others do not. Most others do not. But having straight hair or straightening the hair has been a survival mechanism in Western societies, specifically here in the U.S. And during slavery, um, women with straightened hair had more privileges and were considered within the beauty norm. Okay, just simply straightening their hair. Um, and Also, the mechanism of division that was used by slave masters was colorism and what we call the hair hierarchy. And so, if you think about a triangle, At the pinnacle of the triangle are those who are what we call biracial or mulatto, and these individuals more than likely were the um, the children of the slave master, or perhaps grandchildren of the slave master, and they were much more privileged than those who were farther down on the triangle. And the farther, the lower that you get, the lower that you are on the triangle, the darker your skin is, and the more kinkier or the more nappy your hair is. And so you have less privileges. Most people who are very dark skinned and with very tight, kinky, coily hair were servants or slaves outside of the house and did much of the work on the plantations. A lot of harsh, uh, um, jobs that were laid upon the slaves. And not to say that people, slaves in the house didn't go through things. They did, very much so. But the climate and so forth, the people at the those slaves outside had to deal with, just harsh conditions outside, not having breaks and so forth. So um, the hair hierarchy was used to divide, slaves of darker hue and lighter hue. It was a division, and so the higher up in the hierarchy you are, the more better and more privileged and economically better you were. Okay, so and the hair hierarchy is still going on today amongst many black communities, not just or black people, not just in the U.S. but also worldwide. And brown people deal with that as well. Um, Post emancipation, African American culture did the double duty of investing into two things to fix, quote unquote, their blackness. One is skin bleaching, and again, the other remedy was straightening their hair, both together, um, to create resemblance of white counterparts. It was again, it was a method of assimilation and survival. This was not something that they formulated in their heads and just wanted to do and change just because they had the freedom to do so. No, this was a mechanism to be able to survive and have some type of livelihood of survival. A lot of times the word nappy is very, well, right now it's up in arms for a lot of people. Other people are very comfortable with the word nappy, and others are not, simply because the derogatory connotations that have been connected to this word for many, many, many decades and centuries within the United States and abroad. So some people don't really embrace the word nappy, and some people are, turning this word or this term nappy around for the good. Okay, and also the word nappy in the UK or in London means dirty diaper. And so, really, it's for some people who do not like the word nappy, it's really saying that your hair is dirty. It's, you know, unclean, nasty. And so that is one reason why some people do not like the word nappy. And it can also be so to the point of so derogatory that some women will even consider saying nappy as calling her out of her name. So it is a very controversial word. As we were talking about Madam C.J. Walker last week, we talked about her being at the pinnacle or one of the pioneers who created, um, you know, the black hair industry as it was, and also enhance the hair straightening methods and tools. And so, again, this began the black hair market within the 20th century. And many tools, such as a hot comb, was used to, and the flat iron was used to straighten the hair. And these are three different methods that we use even now. We are still using straightening combs and flat irons. Um, we use relaxers, the chemical lye, and also no lye relaxers are used widely by people. But there has been a decline in using perms in the U.S. That market has declined greatly over the past 10 years, 7 years, because more women in the U.S. and some in other places are embracing the natural look. Also, permanent waving or curly perms or S curls are also another form of not really straightening, but relaxing or creating a more softer curl that's more European like. So that is another way of, kind of getting out of the category of kinky curly. Okay. Um, Straight hair or hair that does not resemble kinky or curly hair for African American women helps them to assimilate and become inclusive in the mainstream European straight look in American cultural complex. I think we can all pretty much agree with that. That the straight hair does again help us to assimilate to white beauty standards, and it has done that for many years. Not to say that, you know, the struggle has not been as easy, but it has, helped people to obtain some privileges by just straightening the hair. Um, as far as economically and even politically, some people have got into political arenas because of the assimilation of turning kinky hair into straight, even jobs as well. So um, it's still going on today. All right, so the next category is kinky hair. Okay. Um, for generations, the natural state of African American hair has been stigmatized as nappy, unkempt, and unprofessional. However, Black women are owning their curly, kinky locks, and it's trending. And it is trending, and it's a great thing. Again, just piggybacking on slavery and how the hierarchy has contributed to the divide of the African American community, and it still does today. It's still perpetuating racism and self-hate within the Black community, and just not in the U.S., but in many different parts of the world, such as Brazil. Brazil is the one of the most racist countries against Black females, and specifically Black females. They even had songs that really were very, very derogatory towards Black females. Um, it's a lot of racism and self hate, and that women run into because of the stereotypical vices and stereotypical and negative stigmas that are placed on Black women. So this is not just a U.S. problem, but it is worldwide. But going back to slavery, um, talking about the hair hierarchy. Um, hair and skin color go hand in hand. So, again, the darker you are, the more nappy your hair is, the lower on the totem pole that you are considered. So, again, that color caste system, um, you know, began during slavery, and many people from other parts of the world, like India, also um, uh, have created a color cast, you know, and skin bleaching is is a very high market um, beauty market in India and also in other places where there are darker hues or people who have African descent. And also in Africa, skin bleaching is very, very prominent. Um, so negative hair stigmas towards African American women began during the beginning of the African diaspora. So even during slavery, in many slave countries or where, slaves were dropped off at in the West Indies, in America, in other places, hair stigmas are still very prominent. Okay, so I'm not sure if you're going to be able to hear it, but again, I will put the links of the videos in your email so you can definitely, look at them on your own. But I'm just going to play it in case you might be able to hear it. If not, they'll be in your email, the links. So I'm not going to play the whole thing, but on your spare time, please make sure you watch it. It's an awesome, awesome video. All right, so the next part of our lesson is hair stigmas in the media. Okay. Um, there are different hair stigmas historically that have been attached to Black people. Very negative, very derogatory, not positive at all. And so we're just going to kind of reflect on some of these hair stigmas and even think about and reflect on the present day media and how some of these images are still connected to Black people, even in a contemporary way. Okay, so the first thing that we want to kind of talk about, having to do with the hair stigma, is the concept of good hair and bad hair. And a lot of that was talked about in the previous video with the three sisters. Good hair again denotes that it's hair that is closer to a more European look, a very loose, wavy curl pattern, or straight. Again, and that is, if you look at on the hair scale, the natural hair scale, it's the first um, 1 through 3 numbers. But as you go farther down on the scale, the hair from 3B on down is what's considered in some in the Black community or brown community is the bad hair. And the bad hair again is the type of hair that is closely related to Africa and African hair, okay, or African kinky hair. So, these are words that we want to shun when we're speaking about ourselves and other people, of African descent, because everybody has beautiful hair. There is not a good hair or a bad hair unless it's damaged. It has some, damage going on in the hair and the scalp. Then we have a medical issue. Then that's something that is not good, you know. But as far as the texture of the hair, the look of the hair, the color of the hair, whether it holds moisture more than the other, is not and should not have a type of cast. It should not be, that person should not be judged based upon their hair and skin complexion. We are all Black people. We are all beautiful people. There is no other people on the planet as diverse and as beautiful and as creative and as smart as we are. So we have to embrace who we are from inside out. And that comes from understanding this concept and, shunning this concept of good hair, bad hair, because it only continues to perpetuate a divide between us. We need to come together. We need to embrace who we are, our uniquenesses as Black and brown people. We need to embrace that and understand again the historical notation of Black hair from different tribes, from different parts of Africa, and how powerful and that Black hair is. It is a very life source of who we are, and we need to embrace that. That is so important. So, um, let's say no to good hair, bad hair. um, Also, in many of the slave ads back in the 1800s, of course, slaves ran away trying to gain freedom. They would have newspaper ads, and the newspaper ads were very derogatory in explaining how some of the slaves look, and specifically, they would describe the hair. Even in slavery, we still try to keep up different hair trends because it was just something embedded in us. but also because the work was so strenuous, and sometimes it was, I mean, all the time was sun up, sun down, and doing hair could be something that could take all day because there are still ties to Africa, and the intricate ways of braiding and so forth could take all day, and they didn't have that time. They really were only off on the Sundays for like church and so forth. So they would do their hair, for a little bit of time on Saturday. And a lot of times it was just something very simple, or they would wear a head rag. And a lot of people lost hair because they couldn't maintain it because they didn't have the hair care like they did in Africa. So a lot of people lost hair and just wore head wraps, or and just covered the head. So but just going back on the slave ads, a lot of times they would describe slaves based upon their hair and also their body image, and also skin tone as well. Even racism, scientific racism. Now, this is a term that white scientists would basically use scientific notations and so forth to prove that black people were not human beings because of their hair, that they were a different species, just because of the texture of their hair. Because our hair looked like wool, they just said that we are basically animals. Negative perceptions of natural hair from slave masters persist. Using derogatory descriptions of African American hair was used to distinguish the superiority of whites over blacks. And I'm pretty sure we can all agree with that. And this is an example of a slave ad. Um, and as you can see, this is a slave master, Joseph Royale. And this is the description of the runaway slave. She was a mulatto girl. And remember, mulatto is biracial. And her name is Jenny. This is her age. And here's the description of her hair. Very buffy head of hair. Okay. So now we are going into another type of symbolic or derogatory description that the media holds for black women, and it's called the tragic mulatto. And that a lot of times a mulatto is the biracial black female. A lot of times she, in movies and so forth, was suicidal, a lot of self hatred, depression. She would play the roles that she was depressed with alcoholism, and the mulatto had issues with her self identity because she was light enough to pass, and for that, trying to appease and be a part of the white, and knowing inside that she is not, a white woman, that created a self-loathing, the quote unquote, the passing as white. And then on the other side, she had to deal with her own people not accepting her because she wasn't black enough. She was pitied, or either they hated her because she did not resemble them. So she hated or feared whites within those type of roles, and she was always seeking their approval because, of course, being white means that if I can pass, I have a better chance of living. I have a better chance of economic, a better economic type of living. My economy is better, my economic stance is better, if I can pass for white. And many black women did pass for white. I actually had an uncle. My great grandmother, she was a light of complexion, and she had my uncle, and she actually got raped by a white man, and so he was very, very light. If you see my uncle, he would look like a white man, and so um, he was also in the army, um, and he was a veteran. He was a soldier for the Vietnam War, and also he also was in World War II, fought in World War II as well. And so during that time in World War II, he did a lot of passing, you know, because it was survival for him. So black women and black men did go through this type of passing, and it really was something that a lot of people dealt with, and this was portrayed. This type of portrayal was in a lot of movies. Um, the next um, the next depiction is the coon, and this is a character born during the American slavery. Um, and the description of the coon is a very dark skinned, skinny um, man or woman, or the woman might look like what we call the mammy, a very heavy set lady, dark skin with a handkerchief or a head tie. But they would have big, white, bulging eyes, big lips, and they looked like something was maybe like special needs. Like they taught their speech was very childlike, and of course they used ebonics. So the depiction of the coon was very derogatory towards blacks, and coons were the epitome of lazy, or they were subhuman. They did not even look like human beings. They looked more like buffoons, or monkey like. And a lot of them would the ads would be on different type of foods or tobacco or cleaning products. The coon would be placed on there, and a lot of times they would have the coons being chased by chickens, because a lot of after slavery as well, they were farmers, and so they would have chickens chasing the coons, or either they're eating watermelon. And really, watermelon was a um, was farming watermelons back then was something that black people, it was a gain for them, because it helped them to stabilize in the economy after slavery, and white people knew that, so they used you know their knowledge of farming and growing watermelons. They used that against them, and used it as something derogatory and symbolic to the quote unquote the coon. So you'll see them always eating watermelons, or eating chicken, or being chased by chickens. And another very famous coon was the little black Sambo, and that was a child. I'm sorry. So this is a picture of Sambo. Um, Also, um, the little black Sambo and the pickaninny. So the pickaninny is actually the coon, but childlike. Okay, so the pickaninny was a dominant racial character of black children for most of the country's history. They were child coons, miniature versions um, of the coons. And then pickaninnies had bulging eyes, unkempt hair, red lips, and wide mouths, which they stuffed huge pieces of watermelon. And they were themselves tasty morsels for alligators. And also back then, they did use African or black babies as bait for alligators. So these are depictions um, of the pickaninnies on, as you can see, looks like a can of soda and then a paint book. This is also another depiction, which is called the Jezebel. And this is a license plate of a pregnant coon. And this was used during the time in the 1960s when Lyndon B. Johnson was running for presidency. And this was a political slogan. Um, and it depicts a picture of a Jezebel coon, and this was a license plate. Also, the Jezebel were in movies in the 70s as well, and also this type of symbolic symbolism is also carried in rap videos. Um, with women that look very promiscuous, very sexual in wear and so forth. And so this depiction is still carried into movies and in the music media as well. And this is just another ad, with the Jezebel as well, with tobacco. If you have any questions about what we've went over so far, please don't hesitate to email me, and I'll be happy to answer your questions before our next class. Okay. Another thing, the black hair politics. Another very powerful symbolic symbolism in black hair and political views is wearing your hair in dreads. Dreads are very political. It has to do or associated with the followers of the Rastafarian religion. Very heavy in in a political movement in the islands, and then also carried into the states. And they were seen as very controversial, very political, because this is a type of hair that, it can't be, it can be now corrected, but it's a permanent type of styling. And it used to be once you had dreads, you can't undo them, but now you can. But it's a very powerful look. It's very connected towards African roots. So it's a very, very powerful statement when wearing dreads. And even now, dreads or locks rather, are very powerful. Even in the workplace, some workplaces do not allow some people to wear dreads. Because it is not a part of white beauty standards and it's very political. And this is an example of black hair politics in the workplace. And as you know, this is, or you may not know, but it's very, very, black women and men have been dealing with workplace politics, dealing with hair for many, many years, and it's still going on. People have lost their jobs. They went through lawsuits based upon black hair. And so this is an example of incident at Glamour magazine. So a white Glamour magazine editor told a group of women at New York law firm that afros were no-no and that a political hairstyle like dreadlocks was inappropriate for the workplace. Black women were outraged, and the comments got the editor 6 weeks on probation and ultimately resulted in resignation. And this was um, really not that long ago. So there is issues on the workplace about black hair. And black hair again is very, very political. But thank goodness that a lot of us are coming together and black hair is trending. We are embracing black hair. We are celebrating black hair and we are loving ourselves. Um, and it is a wonderful thing. And so, now we have in 2019 and the bud of 2020, the Crown Act started. And the Crown Act, which stands for Create a Respectful and Wide World for Natural Hair, is a law that prohibits the discrimination of women based upon their hairstyles and hair textures. And that is beautiful. And I love what is going on with this. And it is trending in many states. California was the first one. I think New Jersey is doing it. Maryland passed is going through passing this law, this bill. So it is trending. It is also going to be starting in Georgia. The National Black Child Development Institute is advocating on behalf of the Crown Act. So it is trending and it's a beautiful thing. So let's listen to this. If you can't listen to it, again, I will put the link in the email. All right. Awesome stuff. All right. So, um, I think that's the beauty of, even though we've been through so much for so long historically, the beauty of it is that a lot of us are learning the history. They're learning what is appropriate to embrace and what is not appropriate to embrace. And we are also giving that to our young people. Um, Young black girls are being involved. As you know, a lot of stigmas are going into the school system, but black girls are revolting against the white beauty standards. They are standing up for themselves. They are embracing each other, and it continues to trend. And I'm so thankful that it's trending. I'm so thankful that um, these negative stereotypes and images are not permeating everybody in the black community. Some people are revolting against these things. They're accepting them, but um, they're not accepting them. They understand what's going on, the historical notation of it, but it's unacceptable and they're not standing for it anymore. So this is a wonderful thing. Black women are celebrating who they are, from inside out. They are celebrating their hair, their glory, and it's a beautiful thing. So I challenge you to also embrace yourselves, educate, share, empower your friends, your family members about black hair and how beautiful it is. No matter what the texture is, no matter what your skin tone is, we are all black and we are all beautiful and it should be embraced. So, young black women are now celebrating the stigma and negative connotations of nappy hair or kinky hair. For generations, natural state of African American hair has been stigmatized as nappy, unkempt, and unprofessional. However, black women are owning their curly, kinky locks, and it's trending. And it's great, and it's beautiful. So this concludes our lesson for week 2. And if you have any questions about what we've learned, I'm here. Please email me. Let me know your thoughts. And I do have a homework assignment. Our homework is creating graffiti art. Create a graffiti art based upon black hair stigmas and or the focus of black beauty of the focus of beauty of black hair. So you can do something about the stigmas of black hair, or you can do both the stigmas and the beauty of black hair, or just focus on black hair beauty.